Welcome back to the Beat the Odds at Business and Wealth podcast. And today we're talking about 10 ways to fight the CRA who is wrong 83% of the time. And we're here, of course, joined with us is Josh Spurrell, who's in our Manila office. Hey, Josh, how's it going today?
Well, I'm doing good, Trevor. I'm trying to liberate a few of our staff here who are stuck here on the administrative bureaucracies to try to get them over to the Dubai office. But we're working on it. We're going to get them out. So,
All right. So I saw this headline when I was looking at X, and I thought, yeah, I think this would probably be a really funny topic that a lot of people would really relate to, especially in Canada, because, we've got so many CRA agents, and that whole space has been bloated with so many workers. And I think, a lot of them work from home. It's just comical that this report came out, and they found that they're only right 17% of the time when they have a question. Like when you have a question on the CRA, they're only right 17% of the time. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about your history with the CRA.
yeah, I mean that's maybe if I was turning this to 11, 11 ways to fight CRA, maybe that would be way number 11 is like try to maintain a sense of humor because this is not going to be easy. So dig in. We're going to get to some real strategies on how to help you on this because it's not easy. So if you can do it with a bit of a sense of humor, often they're very serious issues. But if you take them too seriously, you might go crazy. So, but I want to show people that this is the actual number. Like this isn't a made up number. This isn't like hyperbolic where it's just we're saying something as clickbaity. So I want to show people the actual report here. I'll pull it up on the screen so people can see. Just back into here. Here we go. It's right from the Auditor General of Canada. And it actually said, like, the funniest part is it just starts saying it's, in 2024, 2025, the Canada Revenue Agency received more than 32 million calls. Of those, just over 10 million calls reached an agent at the 8 contact centers. So in other words, 22 million of the callers of the 32 just gave up because it was too frustrating before they could actually
They
get this on.
answered less than a third of the calls. Oh my God.
Less than a third of the calls, like people just gave up, right? It really is that bad, people. Like it really is kind of a comical, a comical level. And when you get to the responses here, it's like, here's what they're talking about: the accuracy of responses when it dealt with individual taxes that should be, relatively more straightforward than the business taxes. They were only accurate 17% of the time. So they were only accurate 17% of the time. And I tried to find, there's another stat. There was an Ipsos Reid survey. This was done probably 7 or 8 years ago. It actually had relatively the same results where CRA, they asked them 5 basic questions and they were wrong 80% of the time. Like 80% of the time, they couldn't get all 5 basic questions wrong. So, right. So
well, from this, it looks like they did not too bad with benefits and business taxes. I mean, half, just over half. That's not too bad.
Accurate, but not complete.
Right.
They're incomplete. They're missing stuff in their responses. So, like, this is a real thing, and just trying to get back here as to, it's a real thing. This isn't a made up number. So these strategies that we're going to outline here, like, they're really important because I'm telling you, like, it won't work when you think you should be able to call them. It's like, I'll get the good agent. I'll know what it's like. No, you will not. You will not. So you need to know these strategies because these are, really important in getting there. So, so I think, yeah, let's dive in, as they say, and get to it, right? And so the number one strategy that you're going to have to do is you're going to need to do a combination of educate yourself. We teach people basics about taxes in our boot camp, overview of it. $200 every, we do that twice a year, sold out this time, but new one coming up in May. But you need to educate yourself about taxes. And if it's or you need to hire someone else, preferably both. And if you can't afford to hire someone else, I'm telling you right now that the large language models ChatGPT, Grok are more accurate than the CRA agents. Like they just are. Like right now, today, they're more accurate. Now, I'm not saying I would leave a high value tax issue to Grok, but if it's between me trusting the CRA agent or me trusting Grok, it's like Brock's going to write more often. Like it just will. And I don't want that to be right. I don't think you should trust a high level issue to just that because there's a lot of incomplete. As anyone in the information space, like if you're not using AI tools to make your responses better right now, you're behind the curve, right? And so a professional right now should be, using to find the weaknesses in those AI models. Are you asking the right questions? What are the blind spots in those responses? But use that. So you need to educate yourself, hire someone, use AI because that's going to be a step in the right direction. Number two, get CRA online access. You might not want to poke around in that system. You might not want to wait for the codes to be mailed out or deal with the phone agents to get access to it. You're like, now I'm on the phone, I might as well just ask them the question. It's like, no, get CRA online access. Do not seek to ask them anything that you can look up on that system because anything on that system is way more accurate than anything they will relay to you verbally over the phone. So get CRA online access. That would be number two. Number three, this is a hard one because this channel is dedicated to helping people beat the odds of business and wealth. Okay. What does it mean to beat the odds of business and wealth? Is 73% of the assets in Canada are controlled by the top 20%. What's the net worth of the top 20%? Approximately 1.2 million or higher. That gets you into that, that trajectory. So you need to consider the materiality of the issue. Okay. We're not on a change the world mission here. We're on the change the net worth of your household mission here. So, I'm going to walk you through these steps, but you're going to see how much time and how much life energy they're going to suck out of you. So you need to consider the materiality of the issue. You should not be executing these steps if they say you owe $67 in interest and penalties. You should pay that and then get back to work and earn some more money. That's what you should do. Okay. And we've just had a long-standing policy at the firm here. It's like if a client gets a tax bill for less than $100, like we just pay it. We don't even talk to them. Like we don't even bother to email or advise the client. We just pay it because it's just not worth it. Never mind, like we don't even look at what it is. We're just going to pay it because it's just not worth your time. It never has been worth your time. Okay. That's going back 14 years ago when $100 actually could buy you dinner, which you can't on a Saturday night these days if you're going to go for a nice steak or something. So so you need to consider the materiality of the issue. You're not going to change the world with this process that I'm going to do. It's like you're going to have a lot of headache, but maybe get yourself out of a really sticky situation. So that, you think that's tough for someone, Trevor, to hear that they need to consider the materiality of it?
Yes, absolutely. Because when it comes to paying taxes or paying too much taxes, people they want to resist, they want to fight. Hey, I believe I was entitled to more. I should have gotten a refund. It's like what, maybe so, maybe not, but it's not a hill to die on, right?
Yes. Okay. Now we're getting into it. Now, if you have to talk to them, you're prepared for you're gonna get on the phone for at least an hour. I question that they have some time parameters there, like the average call length. I think it ranged between say 45 minutes an hour, depending on the type of call. That sounds good, but I wonder if there was times where they just gave up because we know that it's hours sometimes. So every time you talk to a CRA agent, you want to get their agent ID and write it down. And I mean every time, even if you get transferred from agent one to agent two, you should have had agent one's ID and agent two's ID. And so now you can start to see the detail that this is going to, require if you're going to get out of the web. So every single time that you talk to a CRA agent, you need to get their agent ID. Okay. Then you need to follow up on every single verbal request in writing. And this is the hard one when I start dealing with like rookie accountants and they tell me, it's like, I'm saying, hey, how about that adjustment for, Mr. Smith? Did you follow up on that adjustment for Mr. Smith? And they tell me, it's like, yeah, I called CRA and they're processing it. And it's like, so you're telling me that you didn't follow up on the adjustment for Mr. Smith? They're like, yeah, I called them. I was like, exactly. So you're telling me you didn't follow up on the adjustment for Mr. Smith. So the correct mess is yeah, I called the agent, I got their ID, and then I sent a written request with the exact same request again, noting the agent that I talked to, and made that either, submitted it through the online portal or sent it by fax or mailed it into CRA. So every single request that you do needs to be done verbally and again in writing. And this is something that, we've been doing for years, because this issue is like, it's, arguably, always been there. Maybe it's gotten worse, especially with the call times, but I would say the accuracy has always been dreadful. The people answering the phones at CRA, they have like 2 to 4 weeks of training before they start answering the phone. So very, very like low level stuff. Like they're a call center type person. Okay. Um, then you need to, once you're past there, now you have to think, you need to ask to speak to a supervisor. Okay. You know, for sure on the second call, like if you have to call in again for the same issue, it's like that means it didn't work the first time. It's very unlikely to work with a low level agent again the second time. Okay. And, even on the first call, if you don't think it's going in the right direction, if you don't think it's going in the right direction, ask to speak to a supervisor. Remember, you're talking to someone who's going to tell you the wrong answer more often than the right answer. So trust your gut. Like if you think it's the wrong thing, ask to speak to a supervisor. And if they refuse to speak to a supervisor, you're going to notify them that you're going to file a service complaint, and they're going to take you seriously because you asked for their agent ID. The entire tone of the conversation changes once they know you're asking for the agent ID and you're recording for the agent ID. It's like they just want to do their job as simply as possible, with the least friction as possible. They're earning a wage, right? So they want to minimize the number of service complaints coming to them. Okay, so they're going to take the whole thing more seriously. I'm not saying it's going to work every time. It's just higher probability that they're going to take the whole thing more seriously. Okay, and you're going to tell them, like if they refuse to speak to a supervisor, you're going to tell them, it's like, okay, now, Bob, you refuse to speak to a supervisor. So now if this doesn't get resolved, I am going to file a service complaint against you with your agent ID. I'm going to note in my service complaint that you refused me access to your supervisor. Okay. It's like, are you sure you want to refuse me access to your supervisor? And like, that's the type of the conversation that you're going to have us here. They're very uncomfortable. Like when I'm, walking, new accountants how to do this, it's like, it's very uncomfortable. Like, it's not the type of like feel good conversation that you want to have, but it's the type of conversation that's required. Okay. These are the people that can assess you, crazy amounts of tax and freeze your bank accounts. So like you need to treat it the severity as such. Okay. Um, so now you've had that you're talking to an agent who their agent ID. You're elevating it to a supervisor who you also know their agent ID. You're advising them that if they refuse you access to supervisor, that's going to be in a service complaint. Okay, then you also should not feel bullied into accepting the opinion of even like the agent or even the supervisor. If you don't think that that's the right agent, that's the right answer. It's like you're going to submit them that request in writing, and you're going to tell them like, "Can I get your fax number?" If they refuse it, you're going to send it to the general, to the general line or the general tax office, and you're going to submit it in writing. You're telling them, "I don't think this is the right answer." And I'm going to advise, on my written submission about what you're telling me and what I think that, we should be doing. It's like, and think of this in like a context of a payment plan where, you owe the CRA $12,000 and you don't have $12,000. Okay. But you're telling them I can pay you $1,000 a month. And they're telling you, no, you can't do that. That's not going to be acceptable. It's like, I actually think that's fair. Like, I'm trying to pay you. I'm trying to make good on this, and like you're kind of blocking my reasons to do it. And I'm going to send you this in writing, and I'm going to think that say that you're being unreasonable, and I'm going to want you to reconsider. Okay, and you might be doing that to the original agent, or you might be doing that to the supervisor. But like Don't be afraid to do that. Okay. And then you're going to send them that in writing. Okay. Then you have to also understand it's like if you think it's being really unfair, you can file a service complaint. Now, a service complaint is a completely different stream where it's like I'm not getting the access through the department, the general department or the department that's reaching out to me, and I'm going to file a service complaint. Now, the important part when you start filing a service complaint is now you have two simultaneous discussions. You don't disengage the discussion with the department you were dealing originally and only go with the service complaint. You actually proceed with both simultaneously. That's been the strategy that we adopt, right? And sometimes to light a fire under them, I tell them, like, we could tell them, we have a service complaint against you. Like, we don't actually think this is right. We're still trying to resolve, but just so you know, I filed that service complaint last Wednesday. And sometimes you're going to get the tone is going to change now because now it's like, not I'm going to file a service complaint. There is an active service complaint against you, and I'm still corresponding with you to try to resolve it, right? It can really light a fire under people, okay? But you have to understand it's like the service complaint is not going to resolve your tax issue, okay? The service complaint is hopefully going to get you better service from someone who might resolve your tax issue, but you have to understand that you might not get the answer you want next time either. You just might get a little better service, okay? So that's kind of way number 8 that we're at right now. Now, way number 9, we have to understand the difference between a request or adjustment. So that's a request. This is something that I'm asking the tax department to do, and a formal objection. Okay, these are different things. Okay, so a request or an adjustment are not things that they have like a legal obligation to look at in a prescribed manner. Okay, whereas a formal objection is something that they have to look at. Okay, they take longer. Okay, it's not unusual for a formal objection to be in the queue for 18 months. That's not unusual at all. Okay, but you have to understand that you have an opportunity to formally object to a lot of amounts owing. But usually those objection rights are pretty quick. For most issues, they're 90 days, personal taxes, and sometimes the tax filing deadline of the following year. So it's effectively like 1 year. But you have to understand that like those opportunities to formally object are slim and they're narrow in the timelines. And sometimes you might have inadvertently missed the deadline for a formal objection. I would suggest that that's not ideal, but a late objection is better than no objection. The argument is like you weren't aware of that assessment. And so that, that may or may not be accepted. But now you have to understand, we have 3 things going on. We can have a request for an adjustment or, a change. You can have a service complaint and you have a formal objection. And the key is don't disengage with either one of them. You have 3 simultaneous separate communication threads going all at once. Does that make sense, Trevor, when I outline it like that?
Yeah, completely. There's a lot of things there for people to take in, but it's going to be helpful for a lot of folks out there because really what this whole podcast is about is building wealth and helping people with business. So even if you're an individual and you disagree with a judgment that has come up from the CRA and they're just automatically dinging you with something, at least in this podcast, people have an idea of what they can do. And it's not too hard, and it's going to be time consuming, of course, because the timelines that these agents adhere to aren't very strict or very timely, let's say. But at the same time, they're just trying to do their job, which is collect as much from the taxpayer as possible, and your goal is to pay as little as possible, right? So I think you laid it out pretty good here in those 10 steps. Did you have any parting things to say to our audience?
Oh, that's number 9, Chair.
Oh, that's number 9. Oh, I thought it was 10.
10 is coming. 10 is coming. And 10 is the one where, proceed with caution, right? So you can have these 3 simultaneous things coming in, and that's why you have to understand the difficulty of what you're doing. And you should have assessed the materiality right at the beginning and which step you are willing to elevate it to based on the income. Because you're not sticking it to the man. You're not going to change it. The way you proceed with this is not going to change how the government operates. It's just going to suck your ability, your time away from other income earning opportunities. Okay, so think about it like that. It's like this is not how you change the world. This process. This is how you get a better outcome for your individual situation. Okay, so number 10 is you need to consider having a backup bank account and or a backup corporation. Like you need to consider that. Okay, and I mean a backup bank account, not one that you're using, not one that you use until it's necessary, because the CRA is very slow, very disorganized, and so that's both a curse, but it can be a blessing. So if you're dealing with a significant tax issue and you're trying to resolve it, okay, you're trying to resolve it, you're trying to get it adjusted, you're trying to find a payment arrangement. It's like there's a likelihood they're going to freeze your account, and even though you have a legitimate adjustment or you have a legitimate plan to pay them off, now you have to hope that you get an agent on the phone who has the authority to accept that plan and that they have enough time to devote to you. Remember, 30 million calls got placed, and 32 million calls got placed, and only 10 million of them got answered. So that's about the same luck you're going to have with the collection agents. So you need to consider having a backup bank account, because they're very disorganized on collecting against multiple accounts, and limited on their collection powers of multiple entities. Okay, be very careful with personal tax debts, because you can't just start another SIN number tomorrow. You can't start another identity tomorrow. Okay, but corporate tax debts are somewhat more flexible, being that you have options with other corporate entities. So sometimes you need to consider having a different bank account, or in a business situation, a different corporation that's unused, because that can buy you some time. I'm not of the opinion that should be used to skip out on your tax bills, but it can buy you some times while you're legitimately trying to deal with them and just running up into the bureaucracy and disorganization of the CRA. And so that can, give you some breathing room while you can continue to operate. You can continue to earn income and make good on those tax debts, because it's very difficult to operate these days when you're effectively debanked, which is what CRA will often do to your main account.
Yeah, and that's not a good situation that anybody wants to be in, where you've got bills to pay, you've got payroll to pay, you've got certain obligations for your business and or personal life, and if you got no bank account, you're kind of hooped. So I think number 10 is really good advice. But I guess let's rewind and go back to the beginning. The goal is to have proper representation and proper accounting right from the start, so you don't get into these situations. I think that would be, maybe a number 12 on the list, is like, don't get into these situations with the CRA. Pay your withholding taxes, pay your GST. Like, don't get behind on these things, because then it just causes more stress and more issues for you along the way, and then you don't have to escalate. Now, sometimes mistakes are made at the CRA level or whatnot. But, for the most part, if you have good accounting and good bookkeeping and you're keeping your accounts in order, you shouldn't run into difficulties. What do you say to that, Josh?
Yeah, you want to be taking the steps that you're going to minimize the difficulties you have. Well, it's kind of like twofold. You want to take the steps that are going to minimize the difficulty you're going to have in relation to the size that you are. Okay, you're generating $100,000 of revenue or something. It's like you don't want to be fighting with the CRA department, CRA all the time. But if you got millions of dollars in revenue and dozens of corporations, it's part of the game. Like, it's at this point now, it's like it's part of the game. And so in some respects, it's like you want to get so big that having a couple of tax issues is part of the game. Okay. But at the smaller rate, like if you have a small business, it's like you can't afford to be fighting those battles all the time, right? And the risks that you take should be commensurate with that, right? Whereas if you get in a position where you have some more wealth, you have some more liquidity, you can take some more risk, but they're prudent risks, and so you have to balance those. But yeah, I mean, number one is like, educate yourself, get the proper representation, because your problems with CRA should be proportionate to your income and your ability to pay for someone to deal with them for you, right?
Yeah, I got you. And I've got some things here in the chat. I'm just going to, read from the chat here. Sorry, I'm a little bit. All right. So Sean, these are phenomenal tips. Sean again, did that realtor who was denied his principal residence gain on his own home make any leeway in court against the CRA lately? You guys did a podcast on this about a month ago.
Oh, no, formal objection, it's rolling. So that's like I said, those formal objections are 18 months is par for the course type of thing. Those things.
All right, question number 2. In terms of different banks accounts and shielding yourself against the CRA, is it beneficial in Canada to have all of my own assets out of my personal name and under a trust or a holding company?
You could just look at it on an entity by entity basis. And so you have to look like any entity can have their accounts frozen. So having one entity is the weakness. Having difficulties in your personal tax name is probably the worst. Okay, because you can't get away from that. Like that's assigned to you personally. So I think the weakness is one entity. That's the main weakness, whether it's just you as an individual or nothing else. Like when you're one, there's nowhere else to hide that collection action against that. When you deal with corporations, they're separately legal entities. So if Corporation One has a problem, that's Corporation One's problem, not Corporation Two's problem. Now, there's steps that CRA can take to attempt to make that tax debt assigned to you personally, but it's not an automatic process and it's not a quick process. And so it gives you some leeway there.
All right. And lastly, Sean says one of the first rules not taught in school, but a lot of people learn the hard way, pay your GST. And that's very true. I know you've got a lot of clients out there who, get behind on their GST payments, and yeah, it's not fun. It's not a fun thing.
Trust accounts. They're actually different collection responsibilities, and the seriousness that they take it. GST and payroll debts are viewed differently by CRA than corporate tax and personal tax. So yes, 100%. John, like GST and payroll tax, and it can get very sticky. And I would say payroll tax is even like they collect hard on both of them because they view it as not your money. You just withheld it. You know what I mean? You collected the GST from the customer, give it to us. You withheld the payroll withholding tax from the employee, give it to us, right? But the payroll, so they collect hard on both of them, but the payroll is especially problematic because the penalties of not paying on time are very, very significant.
All right. Well, that's it for the chat. Thanks so much, Josh, for spending the time with us today. And I hope that all goes well in the Manila office and getting those new workers over to Dubai to start working there. Apart from that, that's all for me today. Anything else from you, Josh?
No, I'm excited to be back in the office, and we'll probably have a spooky Halloween budget forecast. We're back in the office next Friday.
All right. Sounds good. We'll see you guys then. Thanks. See you, Josh.